All right, Rose. Come along now. The spot that I think would be perfect should be right up ahead, Rose's mother said, extending her hand out to Rose. She still felt like looking at the grass curling around her feet a little bit, but she took her mother's hand and they continued their walk. How exactly do you know that the perfect spot is up ahead? Rose asked, feeling a bit curious. As I said, Rose, we have many abilities. The ability to commune with the nature around us is simply one of them. In time, you'll learn to do it as well. Think of it as sort of an extension of your own senses. We are able to exchange energy between ourselves and nature. We send our energy out into nature, and in exchange, nature sends back its own energy, through which we are able to perceive the world, to sense it without having seen it. Using this sense, you can tell the geography of any location, the types of plants that live there, and many other things. It's all simply a matter of learning to read the energy of nature, which in time you'll be able to do yourself. Okay. That actually sounds kind of cool, Rose replied. So how much further? Just a little ways, Rose's mother replied. They continued their walk through the woods for a few minutes longer, trekking further and further away from the cabin, until eventually coming upon a very large clearing within the woods. Rose stood in amazement, gazing out at this beautiful clearing. Here there were no trees. It seemed to be an expanse stretching on for hundreds and hundreds of yards in every direction, filled with lush green grass and flowers, and a collection of small ponds scattered throughout it, all having collected water, a few having small lily pads that had gathered inside of them. The entire place was beautiful. Perfect, Rose's mother said, smiling out at the location. Everything we need should be right here, she said as she stepped out into the location. Rose followed behind her as she began cutting a path towards the center of this clearing. After making it to the center, Rose's mother turned around to face her, at which point she grew silent, closing her eyes for a moment and beginning to take very deep, slow breaths. It was at that point that Rose began to notice once again the unfurling of those yellow petals upon her mother's back, once again spreading out into the air. The dresses that they wore had somewhat of an open back design to them. Any normal human person would simply assume that the design was aesthetic, meant to show off a woman's body. However, at this point, Rose was smart enough to realize that this design was far more function than most human beings would give it credit for, allowing the bud from her mother's back to exit out into the world freely without being encumbered by clothing. At the time Rose put on the dress, she found that the opening was a little less appealing than she would have liked, as the bulge on her back was very visible through it, which did make her feel a bit self-conscious. But she put up with it because it was what her mother wanted. As her mother's petals began to spread out, Rose began to note that they spread much further than they did before. Here, in a wide open space, the petals expanded, spreading out to nearly 10 foot. They appeared massive, but also dainty and delicate. The slight breeze that rolled through the location, causing them to shift ever so slightly. Rose could actually see small ripples flowing through them as the breeze passed by, and a joyous smile crossed her mother's face, her eyes still closed, as she began to face upwards towards the sky, as if she were simply absorbing the moment. At this point, her hair beginning to glow in the same way that the petals did. Ah, that's so much better, Rose's mother said, as she finally opened her eyes, looking back to Rose. Not having to hide is so much more comfortable. You know, our blooms are not meant to be hidden away all the time. It gets uncomfortable. It's nice to have an open space with nature so that I can be at ease. But I suppose that in time you'll understand it yourself as well. Once again, looking at her mother in this environment, the beauty of those yellow petals shifting in the breeze, along with her hair and that beautiful golden glow, her mother carried an otherworldly beauty that she wished that she had seen more of throughout her lifetime. Well, I suppose it's time we get down to it, Rose's mother said as she kneeled down, getting to her knees in a small patch of grass that lied beneath their feet. Come, Rose, join me, she said, gesturing downward, inviting Rose to kneel down with her. Without any hesitation, Rose kneeled down into the grass, directly across from her mother. Now, Rose, this is the first part of your Soleil Day. On our world, this is known as the exchange. Both mother and daughter create a gift of nature, and then pass this gift. I give mine to you, and you give yours to me. Me passing mine to you is representative of me passing to you both knowledge and life, and you giving yours to me is a symbol of your gratitude, love, and happiness for the life that I've given you, and a representation of that. And these gifts are made of nature itself. You are now producing the appropriate energies, so it should be more than possible for you to begin this process. Now, listen closely, Rose. I already explained to you that your body is producing energy that gives to nature. But I didn't explain that you can control the flow of that energy. Decide to give more or less depending on your will, and that you can imbue your will into that energy. It's like making a request, and so long as you provide sufficient energy, nature will oblige that request and make it real. Like making a wish and knowing that it will come true. In order to fulfill this process, all one needs to do is relax. Feel yourself grow calm, she said, looking to Rose. Start by closing your eyes and taking a few deep breaths. Try to focus on the feeling of nature, the feeling of the grass wrapping around you, of the wind sweeping by you, the air that fills your lungs, the water that fills the ponds. Simply take slow, relaxing breaths and try to focus on it. Okay, Mom, Rose replied. I'll give it my best shot.